In Canada's trade battle with the United States, forestry is the hardest hit sector in New Brunswick. To hear some politicians talk about it, you'd think this is entirely a Donald Trump problem.
When U.S. tariffs first hit New Brunswick several months ago...
In fact, this goes back years. Of the 45% total surcharge on New Brunswick wood crossing the border, only 10% is a Trump tariff imposed this year. The remainder is a combination of U.S. anti-dumping and countervailing duties in place under Trump and Joe Biden and Donald Trump 1.0. In fact, the whole thing started when Barack Obama was president.
Now we're into different degrees of how problematic it is. It was very problematic before. It's still problematic. Ultimately, it needs to get sorted out with some form of a deal.
For decades, New Brunswick, like the rest of Atlantic Canada, was exempt from U.S. softwood duties. In 2016, the American industry argued successfully that because the province's 2014 forestry plan increased the amount of lumber from government-owned land, our exports were now being subsidized so much they had to be slapped with duties.
That's one thing that I think is missed in all this, is that obviously people will look at what the duties are, the countervailing and anti-dumping duties are under different presidents, but it's really a process that's not determined by each president.
This 2022 ruling, for example, says the New Brunswick government is the dominant supplier of wood to a small number of mills, and prices are significantly distorted as a result. In other words, the U.S. says our wood is artificially cheap, unfairly cheap. New Brunswick disagrees. The province has been arguing otherwise for 8 years without success. The Natural Resources Minister says our historic exemption may be gone forever, and it's time for a unified approach with other provinces.
I don't think this is the time for us to get into too much nuances. That we have a common national type of perspective. That's one that we would all lean in on. With
Canada's market share in the U.S. already down to below 25%, a cap at that level in exchange for lower or zero duties and tariffs could be a win.
If the industry agreed to both sides of the border agreed to a quota system and a very low tariff or a very low duty with that, I think the Canadian industry would be pretty happy with that, just given structurally where things are probably going anyway.
Accepting a cap on market share would be a concession by Canada, a big one, but a tempting one if it buys stability for the industry. But any deal will depend on Donald Trump being in the mood to agree.